And the big question today, can Jedward win the Eurovision? More immediately, can they get through the semi-finals tonight? Bookies are absolutely wetting themselves. Paddy Power says it is set to lose €2 million if the Grimes brothers top the votes on Saturday night. Although the Irish Examiner today says that figure could be closer to €7 million. Ladbrokes have also extended themselves, all the bookies have, because initially Jedward were on odds of 25-1. Those odds have narrowed considerably since. So my view would be that they're really, really, really nice guys. They have great enthusiasm. The song itself isn't bad either. But are they polished enough, and do they have the singing talent to pull it off? Well, you may well think they have, or that they have not. Whatever your view, 0818 300 103 is our telephone number. 083 30 10 103 is our text line. You can email your thoughts to studio@midlandsradio.fm, or you can follow us on Facebook as well. First, though, in a moment, the Don Baker, will be sharing his views, as will the Midlands' very own Mark Hogan. But whether Jedward progress to the finals may have as much to do with statistics as it does with their performance on the night. Adrian Kavanagh is a political analyst. He's also a lecturer of geography at NUI Maynooth, but in his spare time, he is a Eurovision fanatic. Adrian, you're welcome to the programme.
Hi, Will. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Now, you've been crunching some numbers, not about constituencies and political stuff, but about previous Eurovisions. And what have you come up with?
Which do involve constituencies and political stuff as well.
Well, you're absolutely right, they do. So the two disciplines aren't all that dissimilar.
No, because they're quite similar, because you're looking at voting patterns from areas, quite similar to looking at a general election, only where Eurovision, you've got the added factor of European cultural geopolitics, and you also have the fact that you get a contest every year instead of every 5 years with a general election.
But you know what happens every year? We get really excited coming up to the contest, and we wonder if maybe, just maybe, we've selected the right act this year to counteract all the block voting. And then, once the Eurovision is all done and dusted, we bemoan the fact that all the Eastern European countries group together, the Baltic states group together, and so on and so forth. Is that inevitable?
In past years, it's seemed to be inevitable, but to be quite honest, the main problem in past years was that our acts just weren't as good as the acts being put forward by the Eastern European countries. Certain Eastern European countries, such as Turkey and Armenia, have generally tended to have an advantage because they can get more votes from the neighbours, but they can also get votes from their diaspora in Western Europe. Although things have changed in recent years, and on Tuesday night, some of the big hitters who have basically been guaranteed a place in the final up to now, again, Turkey and Armenia, who I mentioned, actually lost out in the semi-final on Tuesday night. So the block voting factor seems to be in decline. It's in decline because Eurovision have changed the rules. They brought in a two semi-final system to try and break up the block voting. They've also brought back jury voting. So in this contest, as with last year's contest, votes will be based 50% on televoting, but also 50% based on a professional jury from the countries involved.
I wonder, does that work to our advantage, or does it work against us?
Finally, I should add, the Western European countries have just got more serious about the contest in the last few years, and you'll see that with the UK this year. They're sending Blue, a big band, whereas in the past years they've really put little effort into it, and that usually has an impact. Sorry, Will, you were asking me a question there?
No, I was just wondering whether having a jury assess the performance of Jedward works for us or against us.
Last year, yeah, that's a good question, because last year the juries did work in our favour. With the jury voting last year, the jury voting helped Niamh Kavanagh get into the final last year. If it had been 100% televoting last year, Niamh would have lost in the semi-final. And the jury voting also helped us in the final. Looking at the figures, the EBU published separate figures for the amount of points countries would have got with televoting, the amount of points countries would have got with jury voting. Last year's final, Niamh would have got 15 points with televoting and 67 points with a jury vote. So there's a very noticeable difference. But of course, Niamh's song was a ballad last year, and the juries tend to like ballads, and I think we saw the impact of that again on Tuesday night, when a lot of slow tempo entries such as Switzerland, Iceland, Finland and Lithuania made it to the final.
How important is the running order? In other words, when an act performs? Because Jedward will be last tonight, and there are two schools of thought. One being that because they will be the final act, people will be fatigued and fed up and they won't really soak in the performance. And the other school of thought is that it'll be fresh in everybody's minds.
Yeah, generally, the later you are in the Eurovision, the better your chances. Funnily enough, performing last isn't statistically the best position. Best position is usually to perform second last or third last, but usually the country that performs last has a good advantage in terms of, especially in the semi-finals, because you have fewer countries involved, so it's only 19 countries tonight as opposed to 25 in the final. So performing last, to be honest, it's a very good draw. It's not the best draw possible. Maybe if we'd got the same draw as Denmark who won before us, that would have been better, but it is a very good draw. It gives us a much better chance of qualifying. However, the word of caution, performing last can be a bad position for up-tempo, quirky songs. 2 years ago, Spain entered an up-tempo act to the Eurovision final. They got the 25th draw position, or actually they were able to choose the 25th draw position because of a new added dimension to the Eurovision draw where countries get wildcards, and if you get the wildcard you can actually pick your draw position, which is interesting in itself. But Spain picked the last position thinking that would give them an added advantage, but they actually finished last in that Eurovision final. So it's generally a very good draw position, but sometimes a quirky up-tempo act might fall out of favour.
Okay, so there are plenty of ifs, buts and maybes. So,
definitely.
Adrian, if you were to deploy that analytical mind of yours and that great brain and call it, will they go through tonight?
If you're looking at the statistics and looking at the voting statistics of all the countries who will be voting in tonight's final, that's all the countries that are taking part in the semi-final, the other 18 countries, but also the three big five countries who get to vote in the semi-final. Unfortunately, we don't have the UK voting for us tonight. They vote in the other semi-final. We've got Germany, France and Italy voting tonight. Looking at the countries who are voting tonight, we have got very little in the way of Eurovision points off these countries in the past. The only real friends we have in tonight's final are countries like Denmark, Estonia, Romania, and to a lesser extent the Netherlands and Cyprus. So we don't have a great history of getting points off the countries that'll be voting in tonight's final. So I would say Jedward, if they qualify tonight, it's a big, big achievement. They have a lot of work to do to kind of overturn past voting history. Of course, 2 nights ago, Switzerland and Lithuania, who've had similarly bad records in recent years, managed to get to the final. So it's not beyond them, but it's by no means a foregone conclusion that we're going to get out of this semi-final. In some ways, getting out of the semi-final might be a harder prospect than doing well in the final, especially if we got another good draw position in the final.
All right, all to play for. Adrian Kavanagh, thank you very much for taking our call again today.
Thanks, Will.
Adrian Kavanagh is a political analyst, lecturer of geography at NUI Maynooth, and he's a leishman to boot as well, so we'll take what he says as gospel. 0818 300 103 is our telephone number. Would you agree with him? Are Jedward certain to go through? Or should they go through? Should we have Jedward on the big stage? Because there are many who feel that we shouldn't. And then you might say, get in the mood, get in the spirit, come on, get behind them. They're nice guys, they are full of energy, and they're precisely what we need. So whether they're your medicine or not your cup of tea, 083 30 10 103 is our text line.